Have you ever looked at a photo and thought you knew the story behind it? A smiling couple, seemingly in love, happy, with their whole lives ahead of them. But what if that smile hid a dark secret? What if one of them was living a lie that would end in a brutal, shocking act of violence? This is the story of Travis Alexander, a man whose life was cut short in one of the most sensationalized cases of our time. It's a story of love, obsession, and a final, desperate act that left a nation stunned. Travis Victor Alexander was born in Riverside, California. By all accounts, he was a charismatic and ambitious young man. After a challenging childhood, he found a new sense of purpose and community in the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints. He moved to Mesa, Arizona, and quickly became a successful salesman and motivational speaker. He was handsome, outgoing, and had a wide circle of friends who adored him. He seemed to have it all: a promising career, a strong faith, and a bright future. But in September 2006, his life took a turn that would ultimately lead to his tragic end. That was when he met Jodi Arias at a conference in Las Vegas. The attraction was instant and intense. Jodi was a budding photographer, beautiful and seemingly enamored with Travis. They began a long-distance relationship, filled with passionate emails, phone calls, and visits. To the outside world, they looked like a perfect couple. But beneath the surface, their relationship was a turbulent whirlwind of breakups and reconciliations. Travis told his friends that Jodi was fun, but that he didn't see a future with her. He found her behavior increasingly possessive and erratic. By the end of 2007, Travis had officially ended the romantic relationship. However, Jodi's connection to him didn't end there. She moved to Mesa, Arizona, just a short distance from Travis's home. Despite him being in a new relationship, friends of Travis reported that Jodi would show up at his house unannounced, hack into his social media accounts, and even slash his tires on one occasion. Their communication continued, a complicated mix of friendship and intimacy that Travis seemed unable to completely sever, and that Jodi seemed unwilling to let go of. She was a constant presence in his life, one that his friends found deeply unsettling. They warned him about her, calling her a stalker, but Travis seemed to believe he could manage the situation. June 2008, Travis was planning a trip to Cancun with another woman. He was excited, looking forward to a new chapter. But he would never make that trip. On the evening of June 4th, Travis was at home. He had been communicating with friends and was active online. But then, suddenly, everything went silent. For 5 days, no one heard from him. His friends grew increasingly worried. He wasn't answering calls or texts, which was completely out of character for the always connected Travis. On June 9th, a group of his concerned friends went to his house in Mesa to check on him. The front door was locked, but they found a key and let themselves in. At first, nothing seemed amiss. The house was tidy, his dog was fine, but Travis was nowhere to be found. They searched the rooms, their anxiety growing with every passing moment. Then, they made their way to the master bedroom and the adjoining bathroom. What they discovered, there was a scene of unimaginable horror. Travis Alexander was found in the shower. It was a brutal and violent scene. The investigation that followed would slowly piece together his final moments. An autopsy revealed the shocking extent of his injuries. He had been stabbed nearly 30 times. His throat had been slit from ear to ear, and he had been shot in the head. The sheer brutality of the attack pointed to a crime of passion, a rage that was personal and deeply felt. The first question for investigators was, who could have done this? Who could have held such a deep-seated rage against a man so many people loved? As police began looking into Travis's life, one name kept coming up again and again: Jodi Arias. Friends immediately pointed the finger at his obsessive ex-girlfriend. They told police about her stalking behavior, her inability to let go, and the volatile nature of their on-again, off-again relationship. When police first questioned Jodi, she denied everything. She claimed she had unseen Travis in months and was in California at the time of the murder. But the evidence started to tell a very different story. A crucial piece of evidence was discovered in Travis's washing machine digital camera. The police managed to recover the deleted photos. The images were chilling. They chronicled the hours leading up to the murder. There were photos of Travis in the shower, alive. Then, there were photos of Jodi. And then, the most damning photo of all, taken accidentally in the struggle, a picture of Travis on the floor, bleeding. The timestamp on the final photo was just after 5:30 p.m. on June 4th. The camera also contained photos of Jodi from later that day, on the road, with her hair newly dyed from blonde to brown. And a bloody palm print found at the scene was a match to both Travis and Jodi. Faced with this mounting evidence, Jodi's story began to crumble. Her alibi fell apart. She had rented a car and turned off her phone for the drive to Arizona. She had even borrowed gas cans to avoid using a credit card and leaving a paper trail. Her initial denial was replaced by a new, shocking story. She admitted she was there, but she claimed they were attacked by two masked intruders who killed Travis and let her go. This story seemed preposterous to investigators and prosecutors. There was no evidence of a break-in, no DNA from any unknown individuals. The story was quickly dismissed as a desperate fabrication. With her intruder story debunked, Jodi Arias changed her story one more time, and this would be the version she took to trial. She now claimed she killed Travis in self-defense. Her trial began in January 2013 and quickly became a media circus. It was broadcast live, and millions of people tuned in to watch the drama unfold. Jodi took the stand in her own defense for 18 days, painting a picture of Travis as a manipulative and abusive partner. She detailed their private life in graphic detail, attempting to portray him as a monster and herself as a victim who finally snapped. Her testimony was captivating and controversial. She cried, she sparred with the prosecutor, Juan Martinez, and she maintained her composure under intense cross-examination. She claimed that on the day of the murder, Travis had become enraged after she dropped his new camera. She said he body-slammed her, and she ran into his closet to grab a gun he kept on a high shelf. She claimed she didn't remember stabbing him, saying she entered a fog, but the prosecution systematically dismantled her story. They presented evidence of the premeditated nature of the crime, the rented car, the turned-off phone, the gas cans, the sheer number of stab wounds, and the combination of a stabbing, a shooting, and a slit throat did not align with a typical self-defense scenario. It spoke of overkill, of a furious, uncontrolled rage. The prosecutor argued that this was not an act of a frightened victim, but the cold, calculated act of a jealous ex-girlfriend who could understand the thought of Travis moving on with another woman. The jury was faced with a difficult task: to sift through the lies, the manipulations, and the conflicting stories to find the truth. Was Jodi Arias a battered woman who fought back, or was she a cold-blooded killer who planned every last detail? After months of testimony and weeks of deliberation, the jury reached a verdict. In May 2013, they found Jodi Arias guilty of first-degree murder, concluding that the killing was premeditated. The story of Travis Alexander and Jodi Arias is a cautionary tale about how obsession can curdle into something truly dangerous. It serves as a stark reminder that the smiling faces we see in photographs don't always tell the whole story. Behind the happy facade can lie a dark and complex reality. Travis was a vibrant man with a promising future, and his life was stolen from him in the most brutal way imaginable. His story is a tragedy that captivated a nation and left an indelible mark on the landscape of true crime. Have you ever looked at a picture-perfect family on social media and thought, they have it all? That's what everyone thought about the Watts family. Shannon Watts, a vibrant, loving mother, was expecting her third child. A boy she and her husband Chris had already named Nico. Her Facebook page was a testament to a life filled with love, beaming photos of her two beautiful daughters, 4-year-old Bella and 3-year-old Celeste, and gushing posts about her wonderful husband, Chris. They lived in a beautiful 5-bedroom home in Frederick, Colorado. From the outside, it was the American dream. But, as we all know, appearances can be deceiving, and behind the curated perfection of their online life, a dark and terrifying secret was festering, one that would lead to one of the most shocking and heartbreaking crimes in recent memory. This is the story of how a picture-perfect family portrait was shattered into a million pieces, revealing a monster hiding in plain sight. It all began on August 13, 2018. Shannon returned home in the early hours of the morning from a business trip to Arizona. A friend and colleague, Nicole Atkinson, had dropped her off around 1:48 a.m. The two had been in constant contact. But when Nicole tried to reach Shannon later that morning, she got no response. This was highly unusual. Shannon lived on her phone. It was essential for her job, and she was always quick to reply. As the hours ticked by with no word, a knot of worry began to tighten in Nicole's stomach. She knew Shannon had a doctor's appointment that day, an appointment she would never miss. When Shannon didn't show up, Nicole's concern turned to full-blown panic. She decided to drive over to the Watts house. She found Shannon's car in the garage, but no one answered the door. Something was terribly wrong. Nicole called the police. She also called Chris Watts, who was supposedly at work. On the phone, he seemed oddly calm, almost unconcerned, telling her not to worry. When the police arrived, they were met by Chris, who had now returned from work. He unlocked the door, and they all entered the eerily quiet house. There were no signs of a struggle. Shannon's purse, phone, and keys were all there. The beds were unmade, but nothing seemed out of place. The only things missing were Shannon and her two little girls, Bella and Celeste. Chris told the police that he and Shannon had an emotional conversation when she got home, and that he had left for work around 5:15 a.m. while she and the girls were still in bed. He claimed he had no idea where they could be. He suggested maybe Shannon had taken the girls to a friend's house for a playdate. But, as the police began their investigation, his story started to show cracks. He seemed detached, his emotions not matching the gravity of the situation. He even went on local news, pleading for his family's safe return. But his performance was unconvincing. Standing on his front porch, he looked into the camera and said, "Shannon, Bella, Celeste, if you're out there, just come back." His words were hollow, his eyes empty. There was no desperation, no raw grief of a husband and father whose entire world had vanished. There was just nothing. This unsettling interview went viral, and the public's suspicion of Chris Watts grew exponentially. People watching from home could sense that something was deeply amiss. The investigation intensified over the next 48 hours. Detectives from the Frederick Police Department and agents from the Colorado Bureau of Investigation and the FBI worked around the clock. They combed through phone records, social media, and surveillance footage from neighbors. A neighbor's security camera captured crucial footage of Chris's truck from the morning of the disappearance. It showed him backing his truck up to the garage at 5:27 a.m. and loading things into it before driving away. The loading process took longer than it would for a simple lunchbox and work tools. What was he putting in his truck in the pre-dawn darkness? As the evidence mounted, the net began to close in on Chris. He agreed to take a polygraph test, a lie detector test. He probably thought he could outsmart it, just as he had been trying to outsmart everyone else. He was wrong. The results were damning. He failed spectacularly. The examiner told him, "You did not pass the polygraph test." The calm, collected mask that Chris had been wearing for days finally began to crumble. Faced with the undeniable evidence and the failed polygraph, Chris Watts finally broke. But his first confession was yet another calculated lie, a twisted attempt to paint himself as a victim. He spun a horrific, fabricated tale. He claimed that after he told Shannon he wanted a separation, he saw her, in a fit of rage, strangling their daughters on the baby monitor. He then claimed that he, in his own rage, killed Shannon in retaliation. It was a monstrous lie, designed to shift blame onto the very woman he had murdered. It was an act of profound cruelty, a final, desperate attempt to desecrate the memory of his wife. The investigators, seasoned professionals who had seen the worst of humanity, didn't buy it for a second. They pushed him, knowing there was more to the story, a more sinister truth he was still hiding. The truth was far worse than anyone could have imagined. Under continued pressure, the real story finally emerged. A confession so chilling it would sicken the world. Chris Watts had been having an affair. For weeks, he had been living a double life with a co-worker named Nicole Kessinger. He had told her he was in the process of separating from his wife. He was infatuated, desperate to start a new life with her, a life free from the responsibilities of being a husband and a father to 3 children. Shannon, Bella, and Celeste were simply obstacles in the way of his new, desired life. So, he decided to eliminate them. On that fateful morning of August 13th, after Shannon returned from her trip, he strangled her in their bed. She was 15 weeks pregnant with their son. After he killed his wife, his 2 young daughters, Bella and Celeste, walked into the room. They had witnessed the unthinkable. He then put his wife's body in the back of his work truck and forced his 2 terrified little girls into the cab with her. He drove them to a remote oil field owned by his employer, Anadarko Petroleum. There, in the cold, desolate landscape, he committed the final, unspeakable acts. He smothered his daughter's 3-year-old Celeste first, with her favorite blanket. 4-year-old Bella watched, and her last words were a heartbreaking plea, "Is the same thing gonna happen to me as cease?" He then disposed of their small bodies by pushing them through the 8-inch hatches of 2 separate oil tanks. He buried his pregnant wife's body in a shallow grave nearby. Then, he went about his day, acting as if nothing had happened, even texting his mistress about their future together. The discovery of the bodies confirmed everyone's worst fears. On August 16th, investigators recovered the remains of Shannon, Bella, and Celeste from the Anadarko oil site. The community, and indeed the world, reeled in horror and disbelief. How could a father do this to his own family? The man who had posted loving family photos just days before was a cold-blooded monster. The motive was as simple as it was sickening: a selfish desire to erase his family to start a new life with his mistress. He saw his wife and children not as human beings he had sworn to love and protect, but as disposable objects standing in his way. To avoid a lengthy and painful trial for Shannon's family and to escape the possibility of the death penalty, Chris Watts pleaded guilty to all charges against him. This included multiple counts of first-degree murder, unlawful termination of a pregnancy, and tampering with deceased human bodies. On November 19, 2018, he was sentenced to 5 life sentences without the possibility of parole, plus an additional 84 years. During the sentencing, Shannon's father, Frank Kruchek, looked at the man who had destroyed his family and said, "I have no idea who you are." The Watts family case is a chilling reminder that evil can lurk behind the most ordinary of facades. It forces us to question how well we truly know the people around us. Shannon, Bella, Celeste, and baby Nico were stolen from this world by an act of unimaginable selfishness and cruelty. Their story serves as a tragic warning about the dark side of human nature and the devastating consequences of secrets and lies. It is a story that will forever be etched in our collective memory as a symbol of ultimate betrayal. We remember them, not for how they died, but for the vibrant, love-filled lives they lived. Lives that were so cruelly cut short. Ever wonder how a seemingly perfect high school love story could end in a shallow grave in a city park? This isn't a fictional thriller. This is the tragic, true story of Hae-min Lee, a bright and beloved high school senior whose life was cut short, leaving behind a mystery that continues to captivate and divide people to this day. It was January 13, 1999, in Baltimore County, Maryland. Hae-min Lee, an 18-year-old student at Woodlawn High School, was a vibrant, ambitious young woman. She was a star athlete on the lacrosse and field hockey teams, managed the boys' wrestling team, and worked a part-time job at LensCrafters. She had a close-knit group of friends, a loving family, and a bright future ahead of her. She dreamed of going to college and becoming an optician. Hae was the kind of person everyone liked, outgoing, responsible, and full of life. But on that cold January afternoon, Hae-min Lee disappeared without a trace. Her day started like any other. She went to school, chatted with friends, and after the final bell, she was supposed to pick up her 6-year-old cousin from kindergarten. It was a daily routine, one she never missed. But that day, she never showed up. When she didn't arrive, her family immediately knew something was terribly wrong. Hae was dependable. She wouldn't just vanish. Panic set in. Her family called the police and reported her missing. The initial search was frantic. Friends and family plastered her face on missing person posters, desperately hoping for a lead. Days turned into weeks, and the hope of finding her alive began to fade. The community was on edge, and everyone at Woodlawn High was asking the same question. Where is Hae? Then, on February 9, 1999, nearly a month after she disappeared, the worst fears were realized. A man walking through Leakin Park, a large wooded area in Baltimore known for its grim reputation as a dumping ground for bodies, stumbled upon a partially buried human body. Dental records soon confirmed the heartbreaking truth. It was Hae-min Lee. An autopsy revealed she had been manually strangled to death. The police investigation immediately zeroed in on her inner circle. Who would want to harm such a popular and well-loved girl? The spotlight quickly fell on her ex-boyfriend, Adnan Said. Adnan was also a popular senior at Woodlawn High. He was a star on the football team, a homecoming king, and known for being a charming and well-liked student. He and Hae had dated for about a year, a relationship they largely kept secret from their conservative immigrant families. They were a classic high school couple passing notes, going to prom, and falling in love. But like many high school romances, it had its ups and downs. They had broken up and gotten back together a few times before their final split just before Christmas of 1998. According to some friends, Adnan was hurt and heartbroken by the breakup. Hae had already moved on and started dating a new guy, Don, who worked with her at LensCrafters. The prosecution's theory was simple. Adnan was a scorned lover, consumed by jealousy and rage, who murdered Hae in an act of revenge. But Adnan had a different story. He maintained his innocence from the very beginning. He said he was at school, then the library, and later, at track practice, the afternoon Hay disappeared. The problem was, his alibi was shaky. His memory of that specific day was fuzzy, just like anyone else would be for a normal day weeks in the past, before they knew it was important. He couldn't provide a concrete, verifiable timeline of his whereabouts during the crucial hours when the murder was believed to have occurred. The case against Adnan rested heavily on two key pieces of evidence. The first was the testimony of a mutual acquaintance, Jay Wilds. Jay was a bit of an outsider in their social circle. He was known for selling marijuana and had a reputation for being a tough guy. Jay came forward to the police with a chilling story. He claimed that Adnan had planned the murder and had shown him Hay's body in the trunk of her own car in the parking lot of a Best Buy. Jay said Adnan then enlisted his help to bury Hay's body in Leakin Park. Jay's story provided the police with a narrative, a timeline, and a motive. He led them to Hay's car, which had been abandoned in a grassy lot. His cooperation was crucial for the prosecution. But Jay's story was also full of inconsistencies. He told the police different versions of the events, changing details about the time, location, and his own level of involvement. He claimed he helped Adnan out of fear, that Adnan had threatened him and his girlfriend. But many questioned why Jay, who portrayed himself as a street-smart guy, would be so easily intimidated. The second pillar of the prosecution's case was cell phone tower data. In 1999, this was relatively new technology for a criminal trial. The police used records from a new cell phone Adnan had just gotten 2 days before Hayes' disappearance. The records showed a series of incoming calls on the afternoon of January 13th. The prosecution argued that the pings from these calls, which connected to cell towers near Leakin Park, placed Adnan's phone and, therefore, Adnan himself, in the vicinity of where Hayes' body was buried around the time Jay said they were digging the grave. This cell phone evidence seemed like the nail in the coffin. It appeared to be the scientific proof that corroborated Jay's otherwise shaky testimony. Adnan's defense attorney at the time, Cristina Gutierrez, was a high-profile and respected lawyer, but she failed to challenge the reliability of this cell phone data. A fax cover sheet that came with the AT&T records explicitly warned that incoming calls were not a reliable indicator of location. This crucial detail was overlooked. Furthermore, Gutierrez failed to contact a potential alibi witness. A classmate of Adnan's named Asia McLean wrote him 2 letters after his arrest, stating that she and her boyfriend had seen and spoken with him in the Woodlawn Public Library during the exact time the prosecution claimed he was committing the murder. This was a direct contradiction to the state's timeline. An alibi witness could have changed everything. But, for reasons that remain unclear, Gutierrez never reached out to Asia. With Jay Wilds' testimony and the seemingly damning cell phone evidence, the jury was convinced. In 2000, after a 6-week trial, Adnan Said was found guilty of first-degree murder, kidnapping, and robbery. He was sentenced to life in prison, plus 30 years. He was just 18 years old. For years, Adnan sat in prison, maintaining his innocence to anyone who would listen. His case faded from the public eye, just another tragic crime story. That all changed in 2014 with the launch of a podcast called Serial. Hosted by journalist Sarah Koenig, Serial reinvestigated the case in weekly installments, diving deep into the evidence, the inconsistencies, and the unanswered questions. The podcast became a global phenomenon, downloaded by millions of people. For the first time, a massive audience heard the details of the case. They heard Adnan's voice from prison.com and articulate, insisting he had nothing to do with Hayes' death. They heard the inconsistencies in Jay's story, the questions about the cell phone evidence, and the revelation about the potential alibi witness, Asia McLean. who Koenig tracked down and interviewed. Asia confirmed she was willing to testify that she saw Adnan in the library. The podcast didn't offer a definitive answer as to who killed Hae-Min Lee. Instead, it raised profound doubts about the fairness of Adnan's conviction. It sparked a new wave of public interest and amateur sleuthing. Online forums buzzed with theories. Was Jay the real killer? Was it someone else entirely, a third person who was never even considered a suspect? The renewed attention had a real-world impact. A new legal team, led by attorney Rabia Chaudhry, a family friend of Adnan's, who had first brought the case to Sarah Koenig, began fighting for a new trial. They argued that Adnan's original lawyer had provided ineffective counsel by failing to investigate the alibi witness and by not challenging the cell phone tower evidence. After years of appeals, in 2016, a judge granted Adnan's side a new trial, a decision that was upheld in 2018. The courts agreed that his original defense had been deficient. It was a huge victory for Adnan and his supporters. However, the state of Maryland appealed this decision, and the legal battle continued to drag on. Then, in a stunning turn of events, in September 2022, the Baltimore City State's Attorney's Office filed a motion to vacate Adnan's conviction. They revealed that their own investigation, conducted with Adnan's defense team, had uncovered new evidence, including the existence of two alternative suspects who were known to police at the time but were never properly ruled out. One of these suspects had even allegedly threatened to kill Hay. The prosecution also admitted that the evidence against Adnan was weak and that they no longer had confidence in the original conviction. On September 19, 2022, after spending 23 years behind bars for a crime he says he did not commit, Adnan Said walked out of the courthouse a free man. The judge ordered his conviction to be vacated and placed him on home detention while the state decided whether to seek a new trial or drop the charges altogether. A few weeks later, prosecutors announced they were dropping all charges against him. New DNA testing on Hay's shoes had found no trace of Adnan's DNA. Adnan Said's release was a monumental moment, celebrated by his supporters around the world. But it did not bring closure. For the family of Hae-Min Lee, it was another painful chapter in a never-ending nightmare. They felt blindsided by the decision, and their lawyer stated that they were not given adequate notice to attend the hearing where Adnan was freed. They lost their daughter, and now the man convicted of her murder was free. The justice they thought they had was gone. The central mystery remains. If Adnan Said didn't kill Hae-Min Lee, who did? The case is officially unsolved. The investigation has been reopened, but the trail is more than 2 decades old. Memories have faded, and physical evidence is limited. The truth of what happened on that January day in 1999 is as elusive as ever. This case is a powerful reminder of the fallibility of the justice system. It's a story about memory, technology, and the stories we tell ourselves to make sense of the unthinkable. And, at its heart, it is the story of Hae-Min Lee, a vibrant young woman whose life was stolen, and whose killer may still be out there. Her story, and the quest for justice, continues. Christmas Eve, 2002. Modesto, California. A quiet street, holiday lights, and one house where an 8-month pregnant woman disappears. Lacey Peterson, 27 years old. In a few weeks, she was supposed to give birth to her son, Connor. That day, she didn't even make it to dinner. Scott Peterson, her husband, tells police one thing: she was home in the morning, watching TV. I went fishing, sounds normal. But then the first detail shows up, and it changes everything. The dog comes back alone. A golden retriever is wandering the neighborhood like someone took him for a walk, and then suddenly vanished. The leash is dirty. like the walk got cut off halfway through, and Lacey gone. Inside the house, her things are still there. Wallet, keys, purse, the kind of things a pregnant woman doesn't leave behind if she's just stepping out. The city starts searching. First family, then neighbors, then hundreds of people. Posters, ribbons, candlelight vigils, cameras, media, all of America is watching, and everyone is asking one question: where is Lottie? But police start asking a different one. Why is Scott so calm? Why doesn't he look like a man whose world just collapsed? And then, December 30th, comes the phone call that changes everything. Amber Frey, a woman from Fresno, tells police, "I'm dating Scott Peterson." And then she adds, "He told me he was single." But then she says something that hits like a punch. "He told me he was a widower, that his wife was dead, that this would be his first Christmas without her. Except Lacey is still missing. No body found, no death confirmed." But Scott is already talking like it's over. From that moment on, police aren't looking for a missing woman. They're looking for a killer. Amber gets recording equipment. And here's the worst part. Scott keeps calling her, talking to his mistress, flirting, lying, while the whole city is holding up his wife's photo on missing posters, like Lacey doesn't exist anymore. Weeks pass. Hope dies slowly. Then, April 2003. San Francisco Bay gives back what someone tried to hide. First, they find the body of a fetus. Then, human remains, DNA confirms it. Lottie and Connor. And suddenly, everything starts pointing in one direction. Scott said he was fishing at the Barkley Marina, and that same area of the bay becomes the place where their bodies appear. Police go back to the things that once seemed innocent. Scott bought a boat shortly before she vanished. There's concrete involved, a homemade anchor, cement dust. Marks that suggest there may have been more than one anchor. Prosecutors built a theory. Lottie was killed, weighted down, and dumped into the water, so she'd never come back. Then, April 18th, 2003, Scott is arrested. He's in San Diego, close to the Mexican border. He has cash, multiple phones, survival gear, a changed appearance. He looks like someone who doesn't want to be found. And now the trial begins, and the whole country watches. Prosecutors don't have one movie-style piece of evidence, but they have something that can be even stronger. A puzzle, the affair, the lies, calling himself a widower before anyone found a body, the boat, the concrete, the bay, and Lottie's body coming back from the water. The jury looks at it all and makes a decision. November 2004. Scott Peterson guilty. For Lottie's murder, for Connor's death, he's sentenced to death. Later, the death sentence is overturned on procedural grounds, and it becomes life in prison without parole. But this story never really ends. Because, even years later, people always come back to the same moment. Christmas Eve, a pregnant woman disappears. The dog comes back alone, and her husband tells another woman he's a widower. Before anyone ever found the body, and the question that sticks like a splinter, was it just a tragedy, or a plan from the very beginning? Imagine this. You're 18 years old, you've just graduated high school, and you're heading to a local store to pick up a last-minute gift for your boyfriend. It's a quick trip, something you've done 100 times. You park your car, walk in, buy the gift, and head back out. But you never make it home. This isn't the plot of a horror movie. This is the true, tragic story of Kelsey Smith. On the evening of June 2nd, 2007, Kelsey did just that. She drove her 1987 Buick Regal to a Target in Overland Park, Kansas. She was a vibrant young woman with a bright future ahead of her. She loved photography, she was in a band, and she was deeply in love with her boyfriend. Her life was just beginning. After buying a gift and a few other items, Kelsey left the store. Security footage shows her walking through the parking lot towards her car. It was the last time anyone would see her alive. When she didn't show up for a planned date with her boyfriend later that evening, her family knew something was terribly wrong. It was completely out of character for Kelsey. She was responsible, always in touch. The panic began to set in. Her parents, Greg and Missy Smith, rushed to the Target parking lot. They found her car, seemingly untouched. Her purse was inside. Her wallet was there, and the items she had just purchased were on the seat. But Kelsey was gone. It was as if she had vanished into thin air. Her family's frantic search began immediately, calling her phone over and over, hoping for an answer that never came. The police were called, and a massive search was launched. Friends, family, and volunteers from the community came out in droves, plastering the city with missing person flyers bearing Kelsey's smiling face. The story quickly gained national attention. Everyone was asking the same question: where is Kelsey Smith? Investigators immediately turned to the surveillance footage from the Target store. As they painstakingly reviewed the tapes, they noticed something unsettling. A man, wearing a white shirt and dark pants, was seen entering the store shortly after Kelsey. The footage showed him seemingly following her through the aisles. He didn't appear to buy anything. He then left the store just moments before Kelsey and was seen getting into a dark-colored, mid-1970s Chevrolet pickup truck. The most chilling piece of footage, however, came from the parking lot camera. It showed a figure forcing Kelsey into her own car before driving away. The police now knew they weren't dealing with a simple missing person case. This was an abduction. The urgency intensified. They had a face, a vehicle, but no name. They released the images to the public, hoping someone would recognize the man. The Smith family, desperate for any lead, worked with their cell phone provider. They were able to ping the location of Kelsey's phone. The pings showed a bizarre and disturbing pattern of movement throughout the night of her disappearance, eventually leading to a wooded area near Longview Lake in Missouri, about 20 miles from the Target store. The final ping came in the early hours of June 3rd, and then silence. Her phone had been turned off. The search now had a focused area. For 4 long days, search teams, many on horseback and with canine units, combed the dense woods and fields around the lake. The family held on to a sliver of hope, praying for her safe return. The media was a constant presence, broadcasting the family's emotional pleas for help. Then, the break they were waiting for came. A tipster, having seen the surveillance images on the news, recognized the man and his distinctive truck. The police had their suspect, a 26-year-old man named Edwin Hall. He was a married father who lived in a nearby town. When police went to his home to question him, they found the very same truck seen in the surveillance video. Initially, Hall denied any involvement. He claimed he was at a different store at the time of the abduction, but the evidence was mounting. His physical appearance matched the man in the video, and his alibi began to fall apart under questioning. Police obtained a search warrant for his home and vehicle. While the interrogation was happening, the tireless search efforts finally led to a heartbreaking discovery. On June 6, 2007, searchers found Kelsey's body in the wooded area near Longview Lake, the same area indicated by her cell phone pings. The entire community, and indeed the nation, was devastated. The hopeful search for a missing girl had turned into a homicide investigation. Faced with the undeniable evidence and the discovery of Kelsey's body, Edwin Hall's story crumbled. He eventually led investigators to the location where he had left her, admitting to the horrific crime. He confessed to abducting Kelsey from the Target parking lot, assaulting her, and then taking her life. The motive was as senseless as the act itself: random, predatory attack on an innocent young woman who was simply in the wrong place at the wrong time. The autopsy later confirmed the cause of death. The details were brutal and highlighted the violence of the attack. The community reeled in shock and grief. How could something so terrible happen in their quiet suburban town? Edwin Hall was charged with premeditated first-degree murder, aggravated kidnapping, and other related crimes. To spare the Smith family the trauma of a prolonged trial, he pleaded guilty to all charges. In 2008, he was sentenced to life in prison without the possibility of parole. But Kelsey's story doesn't end there. In the wake of their unimaginable loss, her parents, Greg and Missy Smith, channeled their grief into action. They were determined that no other family should endure what they went through. They realized that if they had been able to get Kelsey's cell phone location data sooner, the outcome might have been different. At the time, there were significant legal hurdles and delays for law enforcement to obtain that critical information in a time-sensitive emergency. So, they fought for change. They established the Kelsey Smith Foundation and began advocating for new legislation. Their tireless efforts led to the passage of Kelsey's Law. This law requires cell phone companies to provide location data to law enforcement in emergency situations involving a risk of death or serious physical harm. Without the delay of waiting for a warrant, it empowers police to act swiftly in the critical first hours of an abduction. Kelsey's Law was first passed in Kansas in 2009 and has since been enacted in over 20 other states. It has been used countless times to help locate missing persons and has undoubtedly saved lives. The law is a powerful and lasting legacy for a young woman whose life was cut short. It's a testament to her family's strength and their refusal to let her memory fade. Kelsey Smith's case is a chilling reminder of the randomness of evil. But it is also a story of a community's love and a family's incredible resilience. Through Kelsey's Law, her light continues to shine, protecting others from the darkness that took her. She will never be forgotten. Her story serves as a vital lesson in vigilance and a powerful example of how positive change can emerge from the deepest tragedy.